Wildflower or weed, here we go. The mission of our group up here, Native Plants Live Here, is to inspire Yosemite Lakes Park residents to fall in love with their property by planting California natives and stewarding existing native treasures, thus connecting to our land, our wildlife, and each other. And before we get started, because we have a number of people who aren't in Native Plants Live Here, I just want to let you know that we are a group that started about 18 months ago up here in Yosemite Lakes Park because a lot of people wanted to know how to plant native plants in their yards, given how difficult they had found it to garden in conventional ways. And we've grown to about 90 members. Well, we're 105 members. Most of us are in Yosemite Lakes Park. We've established a native garden up here with the support of our homeowners association. And it's an exciting time for us. And we're so happy to welcome members of the California Native Plant Society Sequoia chapter, and also students, in this case of Rodney Olson at Fresno City College from his field biology class.
We have a Fresno State student.
Oh, I'm so sorry. And Fresno State students.
There's one.
Cool. Okay, welcome. I knew eventually I'd end up teaching school age, you know, or post-secondary. I knew I'd end up in a class setting again, and I love it. Okay, so I just want to let you know, as soon as you see the objective of this meeting, you'll see that our objective is not to be as accurate as possible in our identification of a species of wildflower or weed. Our objective is for folks to develop a feel and some specificity for identifying the weeds in their yards. So those of you who are perhaps professional scientists or in a science class at this point might take issue with maybe a little bit of the vagueness of what we say in a couple of places, but just know that it's my judgment that the choices we made best serve our homeowners in general who are trying to encourage native plants in their yards. I hope I said that in a way that is clear. And what's kind of cool about it is that, you know, the science isn't just in service of itself, right? Science at its best, in my opinion, is in service of the world, in service of all life. And as the science informs our decisions here, where the rubber meets the road in our yards, we're able to encourage life into our yards thanks to the scientific knowledge that's available to us.
Well, and you YLP residents are particularly at a nice advantage in that you have very typical, just right out your front doors, California foothill habitats. And this, what we're discussing and why I reached out to Rodney was that the plants we're going to talk about are plants that they are going to cover in their class. They will be covering those habitats. Rodney, you can speak up, but it's almost like when Leslie and I explored YLP, we started creating a plant list for YLP, and we could continue it.
Yes. Thanks, Reagan. Okay. This is part of our journey in Yosemite Lakes Park. And I like to say this at the beginning and end of every meeting, and to remind all of us that we need the serenity to accept the things we can't change in our gardens. Deer, squirrels, gophers, wildflower and weeds existing side by side. And the courage to change the things we can. And one of them is our ability to tell the difference between what promotes life in our garden and what deters it. Native life, I mean. The wisdom to know the difference is why we educate ourselves. This was important to me tonight as a core tenet of our mission. We don't always talk about this. Would someone be willing to read this, please?
I can read it.
Thank you.
All plants are not created equal, particularly in their ability to support wildlife. Most of our native plant eaters are not able to eat alien plants, and we are replacing native plants with alien species at an alarming rate, especially in the suburban gardens on which our wildlife increasingly depends. My central message is that unless we restore native plants to our suburban ecosystems, the future of biodiversity in the United States is dim.
Thank you, Jacob.
Doug Tallamy, Bringing Nature Home. You're welcome.
Doug Tallamy has become a real Cassandra in a way, meaning a prophet of potential doom. But he has proposed a solution, and that solution is to restore biodiversity 1 yard at a time. Okay, tonight's objective. We're learning to identify, protect, and plan for increased numbers of native wildflowers. And after choosing 1 to 3 locations in our own yards, we will weed out exotics and nurture natives in those areas. So we're going to get real specific. Okay, I think I told Reagan earlier, I've become one of those people who puts a cartoon in my presentations. But anyway, I thought it was cute, and I go through that. There's a couple of non-natives I love, and every year I pray that they've been moved to the native list, and they usually haven't been. Okay, our agenda, we'll do a little business, and then we have our program. Our program will be in 3 parts: engagement, information, and that's the part where you need to hold your hats because there's a lot of it, and then reflection. Okay, our group. Guys, there's a little bit, I just wanted to address sort of our group specifically and encourage you. It's getting to be sort of, it's still a great time to plant. So don't think it's too late. It's not even too late to try seeds, try poppy seeds. I didn't plant the poppy seeds in the Salvia Creek garden until last March, and they came up like gangbusters. So it's time to plant. Intermountain Nursery has a lot of plants. I was recently at Luis Nursery in Visalia, and I'm telling you, they have an mind-boggling assortment of California native plants in numbers. I couldn't believe it. And there's a woman there whose name is Leslie Fry, and she's the native plant lady there. It's worth the drive if you want to get some native plants, and you can call ahead of time and see what's available. Darcy, can you take a minute and talk to folks about just some of the, some things that you and I had discussed?
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. I first of all just want to thank you for all that you put into these meetings and educating us. I mean, I personally know I've gleaned just a tremendous amount of wealth, and I think everybody else probably has too. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Darcy.
Coming from the city, I was, you know, prune it, fertilize it, weed kill it. And after getting a house up in YLP, I've learned there's just so much more to native plants that I just never knew anything about before. So I'm loving it, and I hope you guys all are too. And just with that enthusiasm, like Leslie already said, our group is growing. We've got 105 people in our membership, and we're looking to kind of reach more into our community, our neighbors, you know, and get them involved, let them know just the treasures of what the garden can be in what we talked about, bringing wildlife, bringing butterflies and insects and birds into our garden, and how the plants just facilitate that. And we're looking for volunteers mostly. There's a lot of areas that we can work on. Leslie's got some of them here on this slide. You know, volunteers to weed and water the garden. I'm kind of trying to help out with my minimal knowledge on social media just to get the word out about our meetings and what's coming up. And we're looking for better ideas of how we can communicate within our membership and also reaching others. So if any of you guys have ideas, thoughts, leadership skills in some of those areas, we would love to have you step up and just say, hey, I can help out. We're not asking you to, take the reins of the whole thing, but many hands make light the work. And if we can kind of pull together some of the resources, we all have different resources, whether it be, in the gardening area, or maybe the administration area, or a fundraising area. We're looking to raise some funds to help cover some admin costs that we're incurring. Just the monthly fee for the Native Plants Live Here website, and just the fee for these Zoom meetings. I look forward to the day when we can meet actually together. I think it'd be awesome to just meet everybody face to face. But until then, meetings like this, they do cost. And so we're just looking for some help. And so if anybody is interested, please either get a hold of myself or Leslie and just let us know, hey, I've got some leadership skills in this area and I'd like to kind of jump in. We would love to have you be a part.
Thanks, Darcy.
Yeah.
And yeah, guys, we didn't have a great response to the weekly maintenance of the garden. We really need more people. The watering is pretty easy right now, but it just needs some weeding and maintenance. The eucalyptus tree is dropping lots of stuff all over our beautiful plants. So those of you who didn't already volunteer, please think about it, and you can write Jeannie or me or Darcy and let us know, and we'll put you on the schedule. And Patty Gross, thank you so much. Patty took it upon herself to plant 8 new and replacement plants in the garden, and they look fabulous, including, she keeps the stream bed, the dry stream bed maintained and looking great. So Patty, thank you very much. Okay. Sequoia chapter. Reagan's the president of the Sequoia chapter of California Native Plant Society, and there's just so much going on, a lot of new activity there. And, kind of thinking about ways that we can merge more so that we can all benefit from each other's skills and abilities. Maybe even some positions could be shared. So we don't have like 2 membership people and 2, there's one horticulture person, it's me. So maybe I just want to kind of put that in the ether. And I also wanted to let you guys know that I don't know if it's going to happen, but we had a visit to a lovely museum in Fresno where they might be interested in a native plant garden. And I just wanted to let you guys know that, because that may be coming up, in which case we would ask if you wanted to volunteer along with the Sequoia chapter members to work on that garden. So it may or may not happen, but something will for sure happen if that one doesn't. So, okay. I think that's about it for the non-content related things.
Except for the fact that the Sequoia chapter is organically growing. And there's so many opportunities that are coming to us that, we're coming back to life, and it's very exciting. And at the same time, we have to take it one step at a time as far as what we're going to get involved with. And the Arte Americas was just one of those that was opportune, and hopefully it'll work out.
Yep. And we encourage our members up here to become a member of California Native Plant Society. Our affiliation with the Native Plant Society is allowing us to receive donations as a 501c3. And also when we start meeting in person, it will give us the opportunity to have insurance, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it actually is. It isn't until it is. And so there are many benefits other than those, obviously, but we do encourage you and hope you would join and align yourself with the Sequoia chapter when you do that. Okay, here we go. Okay, engagement. That means I'm going to make your brains work for a minute, but probably like the right side of your brain, kind of a dreamy part. Okay, if you have any paper, that would be helpful, but it's not required, nor can I enforce it. But let's think about your individual needs and goals. Now, those of you who are not you don't have a yard, you're kind of thinking about an area or your work in the wild, your work in the field, just kind of translate these questions into what would be relevant for you, okay? So these 4 questions, where will you be using your new knowledge? Just generally. And then I want you to break that area into maybe minimum of 1, maximum of 3 smaller areas according to aspects that I list. Then a description of those areas now and how you would like to transform them with the knowledge of what's a wildflower and what's a weed. And finally, please identify at least one challenge that you'll face when you begin this process. And let's take 3 minutes for this. Okay, starting now. About 1.5 minutes left. I can't see you guys, so I can't tell what stage you're at. If everyone's looking at me like twiddling their thumbs. Okay, just a little bit more.
I see a couple people still kind of working.
Thanks. Let's do about 20 more seconds. Okay. All righty. Okay, we're going to start with information. Now, I'm not just going to bombard you with a bunch of pictures of plants and their names. What I think is really important is that you begin to develop an overall instinct for what might be a weed and what might be a wildflower based on some basic things. In other words, to make inferences when you see a plant, educated inferences, educated guesses. Now, some of you might never have looked at a micro view of a plant. As you do that, it's important to look to try to see the whole plant from the ground up. Try to see what are called basal leaves, meaning are there some kind of leaves against the ground at the very base of the plant? Try to see the other leaves and the stem of the plant. If it's in bloom, or if there's even a seed pod or anything like that, try to get the flower. That's how the name of the plant tends to be given, is by the reproductive parts of the plant in general. And try to find something for scale if you're going to take a photo. So if you're going to take a photo, even put your hand next to it. So literally, sometimes you can look at a picture of a little plant and think it's 6 feet tall, if there's nothing for scale, and vice versa. I have a friend who once bought a dining room table and chairs. You're not going to believe this. And it came and it was for a dollhouse. This is a true story. This is so Black Mirror, isn't it? But it's a total true story. Okay, so anyway, and take a photo of it if you're not sure of it. Just take a photo and go to your computer and do those things. Okay, now make inferences. As you do this sum, you're going to find that you're going to see the same plants repeating in similar habitats, meaning places with similar amounts of sun, shade, moisture, or maybe whether they're in a group of rocks or rock outcropping, or whether they're kind of in what looks like a field where there are no trees. And you want to, Reagan, you want to give like a slightly more specific word about that?
Yeah, and we can go into it later so they have visuals, but because of the Mediterranean grasses and other forbs that we'll discuss, they all tend to like richer soils. They really crowd out the natives in the good spots, and it tends to push the natives in the areas that have less resources, less nutrients. So a good place to go on your property to find native plants is actually in granite outcroppings, in shallow soils on top of rocks, areas where the natives have an advantage in that they don't need the same nutrients as the Mediterranean hitchhikers that we have now.
Makes great sense, right? Yes. You'll also begin noticing that if you go to shady areas of your property, or if you look under oaks, you're going to tend to see similar plants. Like you'll see a lot of, as we'll look at them later, miner's lettuce under oaks, but you're not going to see it, on a rock outcropping in the full sun, most likely. You might see it, but it'll be a sad little specimen. And so you're going to develop a sense for that. And as you do that more and more, you're going to be able to make good guesses about what's a wildflower and what's a weed, because you'll begin to develop a feel for it. But you have to do it until you get the feel for it. Okay, another thing that's important, and as Reagan and I did our field work last week, she helped me with this. Not all bad weeds are created equal in their badness. So the way I'm putting it is distinguish bad from terrible, because we don't have time for everything. So on the left, and we'll identify these later, but this is chickweed. A lot of us have it. A lot of you guys have it under your oak trees together with your miner's lettuce. You have huge piles of it. It's pretty benign. I mean, it's a pain in the butt, but it goes to almost nothing at the end of the spring. It dries out and it becomes almost like fairy hair. It doesn't crowd out a lot of wildflowers, but I think it does shade out a lot of miner's lettuce, but it's not horrible, right? It doesn't put down a tap root. A lot of these don't put down a deep root that goes deep into the soil, that when you pull it out, it actually does a lot of disturbance to the soil. A lot of these have very shallow roots that makes them a less dangerous weed. And Reagan, feel free to come in if my lay person language is a little inaccurate.
Yeah, I just think chickweed's annoying, especially in Fresno. It comes up through cracks and
It's very annoying. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. One of my favorite plants is the little guy on the bottom, that shepherd's purse. He's little, he never gets big, he goes away, you know. He kind of bums my high because he's not native, but he doesn't actually do the kind of damage to my biodiversity that, for instance, on the right, if you look at the plant, I think all of you will recognize this. Look at Edward, poor Edward. He's been doing yeoman's work, pulling that out one plant at a time, I think, in a largish area in his yard, trying to establish some planting area. If you can get them before they're huge, it's way better. The huger they get, the fatter and more stubborn the root becomes. As the root becomes very fat and stubborn, well, we'll talk about that when we get there. It's a really terrible weed because it's incredibly invasive. It crowds out other things. It's hard to remove. And a lot of these terrible weeds stay woody at the end of their lives, and they become a fire hazard. Like on the bottom, you see that's all mustard. That was just not good for our ecosystem when it was flowering, and it's not good for our ecosystem after it's dead. Okay, after you identify the wildflower, it's not enough just to identify it, right? So you want to protect it. One thing to do is to be careful while you remove weeds around it, because removing an adjacent weed can disturb the roots of the wildflower you're trying to protect. So call me crazy, but you can bring snippers, tiny little snippers with you. And a lot of the time, if you're trying to preserve a wildflower, you can snip the green parts of the weed without pulling the roots out. And a lot of the time it removes enough of the green that it can't photosynthesize and grow anymore. So many times I've pulled things out and I've seen the poor wildflower just come out of the dirt. So be careful. Landscape flags, they're my best friend. They can be yours too. Just go to Amazon and put in landscape flag and you can get like 60 for $7 or something. You can also get them at hardware stores, but they're a lot more expensive. And when you see a wildflower, I know you'll all be sure you'll remember it's there, but if you're anything like me, you won't. So stick the flag in. And then everyone who comes to your house will go, what are the flags for? But that's part of the deal. Okay, talk to your spouse, gardener, contractor, PGE, or anyone else who might step on or remove your wildflowers. Don't trust anybody. That's my motto. Don't let anybody on your property with anything you care about without educating them about what can be destroyed and what can't. And make sure you talk to your dog about it. Extremely important.
Talk to your dog.
Now, for instance, I just did this today. On the left is a before shot under my live oak. That's miner's lettuce in the middle and chickweed around it. And on the right is just miner's lettuce in its own little house. And that took me, I measured it, about 37 seconds. So you can pick up chickweed incredibly easy. You just kind of put your fingers through it and it comes out. Just an example, micro weeding, I call it. Okay. Now, before we get to the plants, in addition to these short-term things you're going to do at the end of this class, when the sun comes up tomorrow, there's a way to think long-term about encouraging wildflowers in your yard. And that there's several steps you can take that will make a huge difference. Mulch, mulch, and mulch. So you can mulch before new growth comes up in the fall, Edward. I know you wish you had. Or anytime after you weed. After you weed, replace with 3 inches of the kind of mulch that we've talked about, no additives, hopefully maybe local from the guys who are doing the mulch, doing the tree trimming, or shredded redwood bark called gorilla hair, or just quality bark nuggets. You might think, well, that's gonna shade out wildflowers. Well, sometimes it will, but the overall picture is that if you begin to encourage just your natives, you're going to find that more wildflowers are coming out of the seed bank that already exists in the soil for various reasons. It just happens because underground, it's forming a more robust environment for natives. Now, weed whack mindfully. Again, this sometimes involves discussions with gardeners or spouses. Do weed whack mindfully, meaning before you weed whack, have some sense of what you're going to be whacking. So what I recommend is to take some landscape flags, walk around the area that is going to be weed whacked and find patches of wildflowers that are not in bloom yet, probably. You'll just have to look at the foliage and use flags to create islands that will not be weed whacked until later. And what you'll find is that instead of just a bare expanse of land, you suddenly have islands, resource islands of wildflowers that you can walk among because it's been weed whacked. So it's almost like having a path through your wildflowers for the spring and the early summer. And then when they go to seed, that means that they dry out and they drop their seeds. Then you cut them down again so that they're not a fire hazard. You weed whack again. So it means weed whacking twice, one in the early spring and one after the wildflowers have gone to seed. When you weed whack or when you do any kind of weeding, be conscious that the more you disturb or turn the soil, the more of the undesirable seeds you are bringing up to sprout. It's called soil disturbance. And while it does bring up some natives, it tends to bring up a lot of exotics. Reagan, do you want to say something about that?
Particularly fiddleneck. It loves like fire breaks. Yeah, it just comes in with a vengeance.
Well, that we like.
Sorry, not fiddleneck. Or see, I'm trying not to speak scientific names.
Fillery.
Thank you. Yes, erodium.
Yeah, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
Yep. So if your idea of clearing your property means digging, like putting a shovel in the ground and digging up an inch of soil, you are only inviting worse weeds the next year. So do it mindfully.
Around the flagpole, dug about 2 inches down.
Okay. The other thing is when you think about clearing for fire, make good choices. Discuss with your spouse or gardener beforehand and do it intentionally. In other words, know what you're clearing and what your intention is. You don't want to lose your native shrubs completely. I didn't get to this, but this was going to be a picture of a yard with fiddleneck islands delineated in it. But the challenge is to remove the bad actors without destroying your land. And if you want to know what I mean by destroying your land, take a drive around YLP and look for dirt yards. Okay, here we go. Okay, we have like 65 plants, and that's like a lot. And about 32 of them are native. How about that? Yeah. So Reagan, you want to tell them how we got most of these pictures?
So on Monday, I came up to YLP and Leslie and it was sprinkling. We kind of waited for the sprinkling to slow down, and we just went out, and Leslie was taking pictures and I was taking notes, and I was numbering them of the things that she was taking pictures of and what we wanted to share with you guys. And then, so first we started on her property, and then we went to the neighboring property where I used to live. It's this open lot on a granite outcrop. And I don't know the status of it. It seems like it should all be a part of the association, kind of open space, because there's no room for a house, but there's amazing wildflowers on that lot. And then we went to the clubhouse and walked along the trail before the sun went down.
And this was what Reagan did. She wrote down the names of the plants, because this is what she does. So she knew what about 90% of them were.
The others I picked and brought home. And we also consulted Chris Winchell on some of the fun mysteries, which he thoroughly enjoyed. And Chris Winchell is the Sequoia chapter's rare plant coordinator.
Okay, now Reagan said to me, you don't have to include all the plants. Well, not only did I include all the plants, but until like 5 minutes before the meeting, I was adding more. So it was like a science fiction movie on my computer. It just kept growing and growing and growing. So here you go. Okay, these are plants that we found at my house. Chickweed. I didn't get a picture. Maybe somewhere else in the presentation, there may be a picture of it blooming. It's two different kinds of chickweed. It has a little multi-petal, delicate white flower. You guys must know it well. It tends to be in shady and moist areas underneath oak trees and in corners and between rocks. Very common, very easy to remove. Hemlock. You've probably seen it in your yard. It is not native. You're going to see a green star on the natives. Okay, here's a native.
Hold on, Leslie, go back. Can you go back? Just fun facts. I love to talk about plant families. This is in the carrot family. A lot of things in the carrot family are toxic, but many of them are edible. Fun fact.
Cool. And when she says family, guys, you know how like we have Conium maculatum, right? That's the two genus and species. Well, before that is the family. And it's groups of plants that share many characteristics. Okay, anybody felt Velcro weed? I hope there's some nodding heads, meaning it's the thing that like when you walk by it or you reach for it, it just sticks all over. That's why I included this wonderful picture.
Cleavers.
I thought it was exotic. I thought it was a weed. It's native, which is super cool.
Which it did get changed. There was some research done, and when I was botanizing 15 years ago, it was considered not native, and they switched
Yeah.
it.
Okay, one you've probably seen.
It's pretty.
Okay, here is a major, wonderful native that many of us have in our yards. We have at least 2 species here of it. And I mean, I could have added so many pictures, and we have some at the end that were submitted. But it's a wonderful plant that is delicious. Excuse me? It's delicious. It is just it's just a wonderful wildflower. Oh boy. It's a really bad guy.
It's Edward's bane. Everyone's bane.
Yeah, I hate that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I lived in YLP, one of those seed heads worked its way into my dog's paw, and I ended up popping it out the other end.
Oh, shoot. I forgot to add the calendrinia, Reagan. I don't know if you have time to do that during the thing. Because it looks, a lot of the time people mistake that flower for the erodium flower.
Oh, the
But
red maids?
Yeah. There's a native that a lot of you might have. I forgot to include it. It's okay. You guys can Google it. It's called red maids. It's a really cool native and it has a similar flower kind of.
It's fleshy. It's
Yeah.
fleshy like miner's lettuce. It's in the same family group.
Cool. Okay. It's a bad guy. My picture was out of focus, so I added another little seedling. And you can see, I'm sure many of you recognize these seed heads. And you can see that the one in the middle, it's among some poppies. I think that's on my property. It's among chickweed and exotic grass and all kind of stuff. So, but there's a poppy in there too, so I'll probably weed it away if I can.
This was the first plant I had to identify in plant taxonomy. I'll never forget it.
Ah, memories.
Memories.
Okay, really, really good guy. But this
Okay,
one,
lupins.
excuse me?
Lupins, they're wonderful.
Lupins. So this is actually a perennial lupin that I don't know if it's elsewhere in Yosemite Lakes Park, but I wanted to include it. It comes back every year and it literally is completely invisible after, once the seasons change. It's a
You can
wonderful.
see it was raining when we were out there taking pictures.
Yes,
The
yes.
leaves are all wet.
It was. And by the way, one of the reasons these wildflowers are so valuable is because they provide nectar, shelter, breeding grounds for insects. And insects and seeds bring in birds. We're losing so much. And these native plants attract those members of our wildlife community whose habitat is diminishing. That's the joy of it. When you build it, they come. When you protect it, they come. Okay, another weed. I'm sure you recognize it. Sorry, some of my pictures were less than perfect, but you can see it on the right.
This is the one I wish it was native, but it's not. I think this was the plant that made me love plants as a child because I thought the flowers looked like little Easter bunnies and it was always blooming around Easter. So it actually did cause me to be curious. And as a matter of fact, this is in the mint family. It just doesn't smell like mint.
It doesn't get very big, but it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Oh boy. This is another type of fillery. It's the one that gets bigger, taller. It doesn't carpet the ground in the same way. You can see that lush foliage on the left. The other tends to cling to the ground a little bit more. They have a similar flower, similar seed head. Oh boy. This is a bad actor. We have more than one type of mustard here in YLP, but this is the most conspicuous of them. It covers the stream bank at the bottom of my property. And it's important to recognize that it is a weed, even though it has a pretty yellow flower. As you drive on the 41 toward Fresno, you'll see entire fields of it. And you can distinguish it from fiddlenecks because it's a different color of yellow. It's yellower, and the fiddlenecks are more of a deep orange. Anyway, the one at the bottom left-hand corner looks a lot like mustards in my yard when they're young. The ones on the right look like mustards in my yard when they're old. Very, very not good. And then at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a field of it. This is only in wetter areas, riparian or wetter areas. I have it near the seasonal stream in the back of my property. It's very invasive. It'll cover entire areas. I guess Reagan is probably invasive all over this area, huh, in riparian areas?
I think it's throughout California.
Okay. Okay, here's our friend the fiddleneck. Now, not always easy to distinguish it from grass. Over on the left is a slightly out of focus picture of it, just in an exposed area near my driveway. Many of you have many of these flowers in your yards, and this is what they look like now. They have those spidery, octopusy type, long tapered leaves. And you can see this picture, the second from the left, is in my yard. It's with all that. Those are all exotic grasses, but a fiddleneck right in the middle of them. And in that area, I have lots and lots of patches of fiddleneck. And I'm going to have some weed whacked, but I'm going to keep large swaths of it. And they're so beautiful in our communities. I know you guys are used to seeing fields of yellow, of this orange in the spring. By and large, it's fiddleneck in YLP. There's a single flower, and there's a scene just on my property, at the top of my property, because there they are. This is popcorn flower. As you drive around our local roads, you will see fields of little white flowers. For the most part, this is what they are. The seedlings are on the left. They're easy to miss. And they do often grow in concert with either lupins or fiddlenecks. These early lupins or fiddlenecks, you'll see them. If you drive to Intermountain Nursery in the spring, a lot of the time along the roads there, you'll see just wild fields of popcorn flower on the left and the right. I leave this, even though it's a weed. I leave it because it attracts a lot of insects. And it never gets all that huge in my yard. So I leave it. But make sure, if you weed it, make sure you wear gloves.
Yeah.
Because it has really horrific little hairs all over it that it's not good. And if you don't believe us, just try it once and you'll know. It's a stinging nettle, basically. Okay, one of my personal faves, one of the beautiful plants of the world that people long for in faraway places, yet we treat it like a stepchild in our own backyards. On the left is how it looks in my yard right now, all dried out like that. I'm going to cut it down and trample on it and add it to my pile, my habitat pile. Then in the middle, I have a lot of them down there, and many of them come back year after year. There's an incredibly strong root system, a network of them, and it's already coming back, as you can see. So I don't pull mine from the roots, except in areas where I absolutely don't want them. Areas of my yard, I want them and I keep them. And when when the foliage dies back and the stems die back, I cut them down and I wait for it to resprout the next year. So you see that in the middle. And on the right is the way it looks in the spring. It's just, and it invites pollination by insects that come out at dusk. It's a wonderful, wonderful plant. Now, some people say some people use the word poison, use the word toxic, and people get scared and they clear it from their property. Don't eat it. Don't eat it. That's all I can say. Don't eat it. So yeah,
And it's in the tobacco family.
Yes. And there's all kinds of interesting information about it if you Google it. It's a hallucinogen and not a safe one, but only if you smoke it or eat it. Okay. Oh, one of my faves. This is coming up all over a shady part of my property with very rich soil. Woodland star. It would be really easy to just rake this out, get rid of it. So examine your properties and put down flags. You'll be richly rewarded in the spring. Blue dicks, a lot of us have them. Yeah. They just look like this right now on the left. What you'll see is you'll see something coming up and you'll be like, what's that? Because it looks like a leaf, but it's not a leaf really, and it's not a stem. That's because it's a different kind of plant that doesn't have a stem and leaves the way we're used to, but it's a bulb or a corm, and it creates the beautiful flower on the right. So find them and flag some of them so that you don't weed whack all of them down. They're a wonderful native.
And it's a lily.
It's a lily, thank you. Okay, bad guy. Even though it has really, really cool leaves.
I thought this one was native.
Oh crap, is it?
I thought so.
Okay, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
Anybody know?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's very cute.
Okay, it's very cute. It pulls out really easily if you don't want it. It's all over my paths. Okay, this is not native. It's a really cute, adorable grass though. It doesn't cause a lot of trouble. It's not one of the grasses that make you crazy in all over your property, but it does like to grow in gravel. It does like to grow on paths. It's delicate, it's very cute, but it is not native. Okay.
Yes, bittercress is native.
Oh, awesome. Okay. This is the one that's native.
It's a native mustard.
I had no idea, so I can leave it. I love
Leave
that.
it.
Wow, I've got a lot of it. Cool. Okay, I wanted to show you the overview because the next plants I'm going to show you were all found in this outcropping, and many of you have this type of formation on your properties. Who is it that, oh, it was Ron. Yeah, Ron's property has a bunch of these huge rocks. And as I walked around his property with him, we were able to find some beautiful natives he didn't even know he had. I loved that. But anyway, this is the kind of area, you guys, if you drink coffee or tea, bring it with you and just take your time and explore. Explore the places that look like nothing. Just look closer. So many of you have these in between rocks. It's a native fern, and it's ephemeral, meaning that it goes away after, I think that's what it means, after one season. You often won't see it, but it comes back. Sometimes the little brown sprigs will stay, but usually it's only here till the hot weather, and then you just don't even see it anymore. It's a wonderful native fern. And again, same outcropping. So if you look on the right, you'll see that there is a cluster of natives. And I actually forgot to do a slide for the guy on the left. So you guys see the picture on the right. See in the middle of it on the left, there's a very fine leafed, sort of cut leafed, grayish looking plant coming out of the rocks. That is a golden yarrow or Eriophyllum confertiflorum. It puts out a beautiful yellow flower, and they're actually sold at some local native plant nurseries. Alex sometimes has them. Intermountain Nursery sometimes has them. But they've been propagating on this area. Now, I wanted to tell you guys, this area of my property, I only weeded about 4 years ago. It was one of my last areas I weeded, and I weeded it super carefully because I knew it was rich with native possibilities. And then I mulched, and it's just going crazy. This is soap root, and I have the flower of it somewhere. Shoot, so sorry. It sends up long, tall stalks with gorgeous little white flowers on it. So sorry, I thought I had a picture of the flower.
And it's also a lily.
It's very special. If you have them, flag them and let them develop. It too brings in pollinators at dusk. Okay, here's a super cool plant in the outcropping. This is, I put really because bush beard tongue. I'd have never heard anybody call it that. It used to be in the penstemon family. Anyway, Ron, do you recognize this? This is the one that you have on your property. I'm sure you just said yes. So anyway, this is an unfocused picture at the right, but I took it myself, so I put it in. But you can see it's a really crazy great flower. And it grows between cracks and outcroppings, and it's spectacular. And they're along the trail, the Blue Heron trails. There's several of them in the shaded areas on the west side of the trail. This is a monkey that I was so excited to find on my property. On the left, you can see it. I've got it in 2 spots that I know of. I added the picture on the right in the middle because you can't really see it. So you have to really start looking carefully. It's hiding under that pine cone. And this is the flower it puts out on the right. It's a little native monkey flower. Oh, and it's perennial, comes back every year. Okay, poison oak. Again, this is something that we consider a stepchild, if not an exile. Here it is on my property on the left today. It's just sticks. If you look closely, you can see there are buds. This is what the new leaves look like in the middle. And on the bottom, those are the leaves more mature and blossoms coming out. There's no reason to remove this from your property unless you need access to an area and you don't want to touch it. But there's no reason to go to remote areas of your property and clear it. It's extremely important native habitat. So just be mindful of what you're removing and why you're removing it. There is no need to clear it from parts of your property that you don't have traffic in.
So this one also, I wouldn't say dear to me, but quite a significant memory. So in plant taxonomy, what we were assigned was to collect 100 different species of plants, and that had to include flowers so we could figure out what they were. And I was so excited to see these flowers before the leaves. I had no clue. I was just so flower fixated, like new flower, that dummy, I went and picked it, and I had the worst rash ever. And I had to clear it out of the rest of my plant collection.
Oh boy, this is how we learn.
But yeah, what I remember the flowers being is not as showy as what you have. They were actually really small, yellow with like red stamen and less bunchy like that, just little bits along the stem. But
Yeah,
That's
I didn't include, this one is not from our community, the blooming picture.
Yeah.
So could be a different variety. Okay, really cool native, grows between the rocks all over the place. Look on the left and see the little white spots. They will help you distinguish it from something that you might think is like an a fillery, or even a, you know, a bad guy. He's a really good guy. So there's the flowers on the right, and these are all over YLP, but they tend to be in the rock outcroppings. Many of you have these on your properties, but please look for them and weed around them, and you'll be richly rewarded. And so will the insects, and so will the birds that eat the insects. And there's the outcropping again. It's rich with natives. This is actually my neighbor's side of the outcropping. Okay, this is the granite shelf that Reagan brought us to. She said to me, oh yeah, we'll find these someplace else. She knew it was a different kind of soil, a different kind of area. We spent quite a bit of time here. And this is, those of you who live on Long Hollow, and I know there's a few of you here, might recognize this. Yeah, I see the Millers nodding. Okay, non-native, but real cute. Again, non-native. I don't know how many of you guys have thistles in your yards. I don't. I mean, I have maybe one sometimes. These are extremely invasive in other parts of our area, but I don't know if they've really taken hold here. If anyone has a lot of these in their property, will you say something? Will you just say, I do?
Yeah, I do. Well, not anymore.
You do, Janine?
Well, okay, so I've been watching them spread. They're very insidious. And I've worked very, very hard to eliminate them from my property because they are so very invasive.
Yes.
But I see them gaining ground really throughout our county at a whole bunch of different elevations. This is a really terrible invasive weed.
Yes.
Leslie,
It's
Leslie,
terrible.
we have hundreds and hundreds of them. So Bob does what he calls thistle patrol, and he'll be out there easily for an hour or so, just getting them now while they're tiny.
Oh, okay. Wear gloves, you guys. They're really prickly.
Are these
Oh,
the
yeah.
ones that get like 3 or 4 to 5 feet high?
Yes.
Yes,
I got
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly.
Terrible.
Okay.
but there again, there's a little finch that comes when they go to seed, and they love them. That's what they're after, is the thistle seeds, you know. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're-
much better to put up a finch feeder and get rid of these guys because
Yes, I
they're
did.
awful.
Yeah, so take these out, but make sure you protect the others for the finches.
Yeah. At one time, the whole lower part of my property was covered with them, and I finally
Oh,
got.
really?
Uh,
Oh, yeah. Okay, here's a wonderful flower that comes out toward the end of spring and is aptly named Farewell to Spring. We have more than one type of flower that we call Farewell to Spring here. But at any rate, you can see the seedlings on the left among some erodium. But can you see that they have a different character? Their character of them is different than the character of the erodium, in my judgment. So you develop this radar. Well, you'll look at a crowd of plants like that and you'll go, that looks native. And you'll develop that skill after you do this for a while. So here's the flower that it becomes. I know there's 2 different types of flowers here because we have 2 different types we have Clarkia purpurea, but we also have Amina. But at any rate, it's this beautiful one that appears toward the end of spring, the very end of spring. Really cool plant, really little plant. Looks like a fern, looks like a maidenhair fern. I love this little guy. And I was really happy that Reagan told me he was native. Okay, so this is Harlequin lupins at that granite outcropping. There's just fields of them. Does anybody else have Harlequin lupins on their property? Just say so if you do, please. Okay, you might have them and not know it. So you can see on the left, it's that lupin star looking leaf formation, but they're not narrow leaves. They're chubby little leaves. Protect them and let them go to seed.
And you'll find them in granite, decomposed granite.
Okay. This is also native, which I didn't know, which is really cool. It's a little guy. Now this, somebody wrote me about this, I think. Was it, Diane, was it you?
No,
No, it wasn't you. Somebody wrote me specifically about the cat's ear and said, I've been pulling these like crazy. Please tell me they're native so I can stop pulling them. Well, I'm sorry, but they're not native. But they're easy to pull. There's just a lot of them. Really cool little moss. By the way, a lot of these IDs, like the majority of them, Reagan made them, not me.
That one was Chris.
Oh, it was? Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a challenging one.
Yep.
So there's a little gray pine seedling. So if you see him, flag him and protect him. We've lost so many gray pines. Here's a cool plant I'd never noticed before. Do you want to give that one a minute? Reagan, guys, I don't know if you have this on your property, but you might experiment, see if you do, look around.
Yeah, so we actually have a lot of native bed straws, and it was readily apparent walking around that you guys have the annual that Leslie talked about earlier, but then you have this shrub. And to the left above the flower is a little youngster, and then to the right is a mature shrub. There's definitely benefits that it provides for native insects and moths. Oh, as you can see down there.
Yeah, I included that. If you go to Calscape, which is just this wonderful website that we looked at last time, calscape.org, and you put in the name of a native plant, it will give you lists of the butterflies and moths hosted by that plant. So I just took a screenshot of the ones that are likely attracted to Bollander's bed straw, and there's 9 of them. You know, it's pretty extraordinary.
And there's actually throughout California, there are a lot of these shrubby bed straws that are rare. This one is not, but just a fun fact.
Cool. Okay, where are you, Bob Shirey? This is your spider lupin. Well, it's not yours. We'll get to yours. But this is spider lupin, which was at that property. And there's a field of them on the right. And it sounds like Bob Shirey is lucky because he said they're all over my property. So how cool is that? Oh, sorry. And as you can see, yes?
Sorry, this is Rodney.
Yeah.
I wanted to make an additional plug for the lupin and other members of the pea family, including the lotus that we saw. In addition to those wonderful attributes they have in the attraction of pollinators and such, they're also nitrogen fixers. And through that nitrogen fixation, they're putting nitrogen into the community that can help other beneficial natives on the property. So just wanted to add that bit in there. It's an attribute of the peas.
Thank you, Rodney. And some of the folks on the call may be aware of the pea family's nitrogen fixing because they've been involved in growing in agriculture, where sometimes those are the cover crops in order to add nutrients to the soil in between. Thank you, Rodney. But yeah, check out that skinny little lupin leaf versus the chubby leaf of the Harlequin lupin. So it's not the shape of the single leaflet that you'll be looking at. It's that, I guess they all have 7. It's the 7 points spokes of the wheel, so to speak, of a lupin leaf that is so characteristic.
Yeah, it's described as palmate leaves.
Thank you, palmate. Okay, really cool flower. We have a lot of these here. Oops, Leslie needed another pick. That fell under the radar. I wanted a picture of them in a field because we have swaths of them here. So you'll see, and you'll get to, I've gotten to where it's like, oh, that's bird's eye gilia, because it just has this distinctive kind of soft purpley color. And it does have washes, you know, in these fields you see in YLP. But on the left, again, you might look at it and think it's a weed. Oh, shoot, I didn't get the flowering for this, Reagan, sorry. This
Well, it would have been a guess anyways.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, Linanthus is a plant that some of you might be familiar with for different species that are actually sold at commercial nurseries in 6-packs. It's some of the annual forms of it, or maybe it's perennial, but I think it's annual, are very showy for gardens and easy to grow. But this is our native Linanthus. We just don't know what species. It hasn't bloomed yet. And before something's bloomed, it can be very challenging to identify it. The flower tends to be where a lot of the key identifying characteristics are.
And there was another, to get technical, there was another genus that this could be. It's just so hard to tell before the blooms.
Okay.
Is there a common name?
Whisker bush is one of a whisker. There's a snow white. There's
Rodney nodded at whisker bush.
Whisker bush, whisker brush also.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. And guys, as you look at that this plant, look at the soil it's in. I know that a lot of us tend to say, oh, I have such crappy soil. It's just all decomposed granite. Well, crappy's in the eye of the beholder, right? So this is likely very shallow soil. It's very rocky, very gritty. And it is home sweet home for many of our native wildflowers. I love this little guy. I think he's so cute. And those are the fruits on the right. Those are the seeds that contain seeds. Those little guys contain seeds on the right, Reagan?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it's called shining. There's other pepper grasses that are hairy. But yeah, this one in particular is known for its shine when it's in fruit. And it occurs all over the place.
So if you guys want to get on your hands and knees in some rock outcroppings, you can find some of these. Oh boy. So we weren't able to get down to species because nothing was in bloom. But this is something that I struggle with in certain areas of my garden. It has a little corm, a little like stubborn root, or I guess
persistent.
Very persistent. Thank you. The other thing is, guys, when you buy plants from nurseries, not all nurseries and all growers are created equal. Sometimes growers will, or just accidentally, you'll end up bringing in a plant to plant and it will have just a tiny weed in it. And you think, oh, no big deal. It can be a big deal. So if you introduce oxalis in just in a plant or two, it can literally make your life miserable. So pull the weeds from your nursery plants and dispose of them. You want to talk about this one for a sec, or do we need to? I've never seen it anywhere but where we were. It's like a pillow. It's so soft and mushy.
Yeah, it normally occurs in vernal pools, but this was a wetted area. And so that's why it was just in that little spot.
Okay, I just looked at the time. I'm going to begin moving quickly. Pretty little clover, bad weed, bad weed. Take note, but I know you guys, many of you guys know it.
All over the place.
So we're not going to go into this. This was, though, just an example of the exotic weeds we all have. They tend to be hortiums and bromes, and enough said about those. We can't go into those today. More chickweed. This is from the trail. Okay, I wanted to mention this to you because I've gotten some questions about this. Along the banks of the lake, there are a lot of these plants coming up, and people have said to me, Leslie, there's a native sage growing on the banks of the lake. And I had people so insistent that it was a native sage that I had to go over and do some research. So I did. And it's not a native sage, but it is from the same family as sages, from the mint family. But this is pennyroyal. It is really invasive at the lake, but killdeer are nesting in it. And last year, there was a bad incident where the HOA maintenance cleared the whole bank of the lake while they were nesting. And Bob Gross actually was following a breeding pair, and it was not pretty. It was bad. So that's when he and I talked about it. But at any rate, it's pennyroyal. This is a member of the mustard family. This is, I'm not sure on the left if it's pokeweed. That's the one we saw. But on the right is pokeweed, which I have in my yard some, which is invasive all over the country from what I can see. Rodney, do you want to see some? I can't help you see anything better really, but.
I can't tell.
Okay.
The
Okay.
birds like the birds do like the berries. They spread it around.
Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I have to tell you guys, this was the happiest thing for me ever, because until Reagan said this is Poa secunda, I thought we had no native grasses growing in YLP. Now I know we do, so I'm not looking back to the years where I've pulled it. I'm looking forward to the years when I will not pull it. It looks native, and it is native. And anyway, this is it. Look on the right, you guys. When grasses bloom, that's how you can tell what they are. It's the flowers that tend to identify them. These are called, well, I call them flowers. They are the blooming parts of the grass. It's a native grass right here in YLP, but it's not going to be in your fields competing with the obnoxious grasses. It's going to be between rocks and in places where a native's going to want to be.
And I am guessing it's Poa secunda, but I'm going to put money on the fact that that is a native bunch grass.
Okay, cool. We don't know what this is. I have to move more quickly. This is the only native delphinium I've ever seen around here. It's Hansen's larkspur. So check out the bottom leaves, the basal leaves. That's how you know it's a delphinium before it blooms. Really cool plant. Thank you, Reagan. These, many of us have all over our properties. We have different species of them. It's this kind of succulent, grayish, ghosty looking leaf. They're not all native, but what I do is I save them all because a lot of them are native. So we can talk about those more in the future. On the right is one that it's coming back. So those are the dead stalks from last year, and it's coming back. More lupin. Really cool plant. A lot of people don't like it, but it's a native. It comes up in areas near water. I've got a bunch of them on my property. I thought it was surely a weed. I asked the California Native Plant Society Facebook group and learned that it's cocklebur. These aren't all natives. We don't know the species, but Reagan says that they don't do harm and some of them are native, but you can see the very distinctive leaves. Okay, here's submissions. Shoot, I'm over time. I don't know if you guys have, I think I can be done by 8:40. I don't know if you guys have the time. I hope you do. But I understand if you need to split. Okay, these are from Paula. Paula, are you here? Reagan, can you do these super quick?
I am here.
Hi.
So
Hi.
on the left, I'm gonna guess that's geranium mole. That's the, yeah,
Yes, and guys, try to do them. We've done some of these tonight.
yeah. And then the tangly one is actually wild cucumber, the one with all the flowers. That's
Yay.
really a
That's-
tangle of
and-
it. That's
And
wild.
that's native, Paula. And to the right
Okay.
is fiddleneck. To the
Is
right
that
of
the
that,
fiddleneck?
to the right
I
of
was-
that is miner's lettuce. And at the
Okay.
bottom is the famous what? Chickweed.
Chickweed, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay.
Charlene. I don't know what the one on the left is. Does anybody else? I take that as a no, and we have to move
That-
quickly.
That kind of looks like pearly everlasting, maybe if it's coming from a perennial root.
Oh, really? Okay,
It's not native. It could be. I mean, it's a little hard to tell in that. space.
Yeah,
cool.
that
Okay,
was my first guess.
so Charlene, write that down, wait for it to flower, and then see if it is what it is, okay? And then on the right, am I crazy or that can't be rhamnus, frangula, can it?
Yeah.
There you go. That's a coffee berry, Charlene. That's a native coffee berry. Protect it from the deer.
Okay. Yeah, I have a couple of those in my yard, so I will protect them. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely do, because the deer will eat them.
And the other ones are coming up all over.
Okay, then it probably is the pearly everlasting, like Janine said. Okay, Cherie. So anybody want to take wild guesses? We've covered some of these. So let's just figure out what's the wildflower and what's the weed here. Somebody give it a crack. Somebody be brave. What's the wildflower? What's the weed?
I see Phacelia on the right.
Yes, thank you. That's the caterpillar Phacelia. Somebody else?
The weed's on the bottom, I think, but I can't remember what it's called.
Yep, they're both weeds, right, Reagan?
Yep.
Even the one-
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
How about,
upper-
how
the
about,
upper What I feel like is a catch fly. We didn't talk about those, but I'm not 100%.
oh, yeah. What about at the top?
That's what I'm looking at.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a
that
catch
top.
fly, maybe? A native catch fly?
It's Hypokyrus.
Is that native?
It's one of the cat's ears.
Oh, it's one of the cat's ears.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Okay, cool. And then on the
Oh,
left,
yeah, because there's two of them.
on the left, everybody, I hope you can look at that now and go, that's gotta be a weed.
Hmm.
Okay, Darcy, all four of these are miner's lettuce,
Yeah, it looks like it.
but they're in different, they look kind of different. So you can see the flowers on the right. Thank you, Darcy. Okay, William, is this a native vine or is this wisteria? Somebody help with this, please.
I don't think it's wisteria.
It's not wisteria. It could be a clematis.
Clematis, yeah, clematis.
Yeah.
Like a native clematis or a garden one? I mean, a nursery one.
It
Fine,
might have
totally
come,
useless.
we did, it's with some plants that we have growing up, behind the house. And we didn't think we ever planted it. So we were curious about what it was.
You'll have to wait for it to flower and then we'll try to ID it.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Bob, that's Bob's spider lupin that he's got, lucky him, all over his property. Okay, let's take just a couple of minutes. I think it's important for us to stop receiving information and start processing some, okay? Just for 3 or 4 minutes. Okay. You're going to take about 3.5 minutes and turn your brain inward and think about your yard. Picture an area. Well, you know how to read. Read the questions and answer them. 3.5 minutes. I strongly recommend that you do this and that you do it in writing. Research shows that that's a very effective way to help you not only retain some information we just learned, but also apply it. And please consider whether you might be willing to share briefly some of your thoughts. It's very helpful for us to hear each other's thoughts. About another minute. Okay, I'd love if someone or someone's would be willing to share. Just kind of either put your hand up or just come in.
I don't have a hand,
You don't have 3 concrete steps.
but I can talk. Can you hear me?
Good. Is that Tina?
That's me.
Awesome.
Well, I think my biggest challenge is to get an area that I really care about, which is my front yard, because that's where I spend a lot of time. And first off, I need to really identify what I'm doing so far as picking what I shouldn't pick and what I should, and take pictures of things like other people have done and identify them, like you said, and be mindful of what you're doing. Because I think I get in a big hurry and I don't really pay attention like I should, really.
Yeah.
I think it's important when you're doing the weed eating to flag things like you suggest, and to not just mow everything down, which we all have a habit of doing.
Yeah.
So that's really mainly, I think, of what I would try to do a better job at. And then I think around YLP, I think that if we are mindful of more of these things, that we would encourage the more insects, more bees, more animals, more beauty. And we need to educate. It's just hard to make everybody understand. I don't know how to get that word out more to the public, to our association.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're here for, right, Tina? That's what we're trying to do, one person at a time.
Right. And, we all get so busy. We don't, I know I do.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Tina. Is there someone else who'd like to share?
I think this is Carolyn. We need to work with the HOA some. When I first moved to this area on John Muir, our road was lined every spring with lupins. And then because of the fire hazards, they started spraying, and we have no lupins anymore.
Yeah.
I think price-wise, they need to invest, if nothing else, into a mower. It'd be a lot more, it'd be better for our area if they mowed instead of using the sprays.
That's a really cool idea. And, I think that we have enough history now as an organization that maybe we could have a bit of a voice in that. Maybe that would be helpful, because there is a lot that goes on with the HOA maintenance is counter to the kinds of things that we're valuing.
I do a lot of mowing, and I still have, there were several of the wildflowers that you showed tonight that still come up after the mowing. And I just, stay away from, I mow around, I have little islands around of the wildflowers. And it doesn't seem to affect the lily type, even wildflowers, if you mow. That spray.
What Reagan brought up, you guys, which I thought was, it hadn't occurred to me before, is that if your timing is right on your weed whacking, what you do is you eliminate a lot of the competition that the wildflowers have from the grasses. Right. So as long as you don't completely kill the wildflowers, if you get rid of those grasses, those wildflowers have a fighting chance. Mm-hmm. Okay, we are going to, I wish we had more time, but we don't.
I have a quick suggestion. If you guys are able to get them to stop spraying in like an area where the lupins were, there's a good chance that seed bank is gone. But that might be a fun excursion to collect locally and then redistribute if you can get them to mow.
You mean collect the seeds?
Yeah, don't get it from a seed pack. Get it from your local source.
Right. Thanks, Reagan.
I've tried bringing the lupins back into some of the areas, but they're very difficult to get started.
Yeah, we've had a lot of trouble doing
that. The road was just lined with those lupins,
Yeah, I actually just did a lot of work out by my road, and I had a ton of the little spider lupins, and I kind of created little islands of them as I was pulling everybody else out, and somebody just came in and ate them all. And I hope that squirrel has a terrible stomach ache. But
well, I had a lot of miners lettuce that I went up to check my down by the road to check my natives this morning, and the deer had eaten a lot of my poppies and the miners lettuce.
Yeah.
I watered. I think some of it will come back.
Well, that's a good segue, Carolyn, into our Serenity Prayer. So rather than go into grievance gardening, what I do in my yard is I pursue the serenity to accept the things I can't change in my garden. I hope for the courage to change the things I can. And I hope I'm developing the wisdom to know the difference. And I hope you guys continue to recognize that the work we're doing isn't just in our brains, it's in our spirits. This is a spiritual journey, accepting the difficulties and nurturing life. And if you'll forgive me, COVID deaths hit 500,000. And I was thinking about that today as I was preparing for this meeting, and I thought, what we're doing tonight is promoting life. And not only well-being and human life, which is so enhanced by biodiversity and by the ability to be among thriving life, but we actually save lives by encouraging and planting natives, lives of animals who aren't human. So I hope you don't mind me bringing that bit of sad reflection in, but it is, what we're doing is part of the solution, not part of the problem. And anyway, I'm really, really glad you guys all came, and I hope you benefited. And if there's somebody out there who would be willing to take this presentation, either a PDF of it or a video of it, which we've made, or something, and create a handout from it, I think that's something that people would really enjoy, even if it's a digital handout. But anyway, it's just something to think about, so that the information we have can be preserved as the beginning of a 2021 inventory of YLP plants. So again, a huge thanks to Reagan for your service to us here in YLP. And Rodney, I'm glad you were here. I'm glad your students were here. Welcome to you. And all my love to my Native Plant Lives Here members. And I think that's a wrap.
Good night.
Okay.
Awesome.
thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank you.
evening.
Good
Happy
night.
gardening.
Bye-bye.
Good night. I'm about to
Bye.
stop the meeting. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Yep.
Night.
Good night.